Thursday, April 18th, quick session recap here, starting off with ES. So interestingly enough, we come into the session wanting to see how price responds versus that prior day low. Looking at the 5-minute regular trading hours chart here, price initially keeping with the recent theme. We do have a slight gap higher, so we do have that rally during the overnight and pre-market session. So a gap higher for regular trading hours that then gets sold off during regular trading hours. This is very much in line with the theme that we have seen pretty much for the entirety of the week. If you look at all of the action so far this week, starting with Monday, you have a gap higher, sell-off, slight gap higher right here, sell-off, gap higher right here, Wednesday, sell-off, Thursday, gap higher, sell-off. Now today, the main watch was the reaction versus that prior day low, that 50-60 level of interest. Wanted to see if buyers could continue to defend that prior day low, simply because look at how price previously responded to that point. You have a pretty big rally here, about 50 points, which in ES is quite significant. So we know that there are some responsive buyers here. We get a retest almost about 10-15 minutes into the session, and then drift higher. Now, what is interesting about this is price actually did make a session high, which I found to be significant simply because we've not seen since last Thursday price making and sustaining session highs pretty much for the duration of this week. You do have this incident right through here on Tuesday's range day where price does make that session high, but is quickly pushed back within the range. This typical range day action. Today, we actually have price sustaining that session high and actually pushing up into fresh session highs, almost into that prior day structure point, that prior day lower high. Now, where did it get knocked down? Well, it kind of bumps into that prior all-time high, that 50-90 area. And as we can see, we also have this week's volume point of control directly above. So 5090/5100, treating this as a zone, as I mentioned earlier this week. That continues to be a really strong reference point that we're most likely going to be watching for weeks to come. And as a reminder, where is that level coming from? Well, it's the previous all-time high from back in 2022. Okay, so selling today quite muted compared to what we have seen lately. A lot of the selling, or a lot more of it now, is starting to get absorbed, which is notable. Price still trading down into session lows, but we're not seeing those swift moves lower. What I'm going to be looking at for tomorrow is how price responds versus this, still here in this area of daily support right through here, kind of what we had talked about yesterday. So we do see that support zone right through here, prior resistance, early February, then becomes support. Want to continue to see how price trades versus this area, noting that price actually did sustain that session high for a little bit today. So maybe we're getting some clues here that buyers are starting to step in a bit more. That is something I'll be looking to assess into Friday session as well as Monday. So main watch for tomorrow going to be the reaction versus this 50-35 level of interest down through here. You can see that we do have an afternoon base that has built out right through here, and the session volume point of control is right through here as well. So a good approach for tomorrow, of course, depending on any overnight action as always, just to watch to see how price responds versus this afternoon structure right through here. You have 50-60 level of interest right above, and then the 50-35 level of interest directly below. So two main levels of interest to be watching on ES, knowing that price is trading into a key area of support. However, what makes this challenging is the fact that the context is a daily breakdown and a downtrend. Okay, so we do have some support. We likely find responsive buyers in this area. No real confirmation on the daily just yet, so we want to be still staying nimble with any type of long trades or anything like that, but cognizant of the fact that there may be a shift here considering what the action that we saw today. So we'll just continue to take it day by day. level by level, focusing on how price responds versus that 50-35 tomorrow on ES. Now jumping into NQ. Now, the thing to note here about NQ is we do have Netflix earnings after the bell. Netflix is pretty heavily weighted within the Nasdaq, so that, if there is an outsized move on Netflix, that can definitely impact NQ. So I'll be looking at that Netflix earnings after the close here, but pretty similar story as far as what we want to be seeing in NQ. And as far as the structure is concerned and the action here, very similar to what we just discussed in ES. Kind of the first of all, the theme of the gap high that then sells, right, continues in today's session. But as far as price actually making and sustaining that session high for a bit, first time we've seen that in an entire week since last Thursday, right, on that rally from last Thursday. Now, again, you do have that isolated incident here from this range day, but again, not sustained. You get the blip above, little liquidity grab there, and then back into the range. So we're not going to really be counting that scenario right through there. Now, as far as the structure has developed intraday, same type of setup. We've got an afternoon base right through here sitting on a downside level of interest, that's 17,525 level, right? And we know that all of the volume from today's session has transacted down here. So we want to see how price responds to this structure coming into Friday's session. Taking a look at the daily chart. Context is daily breakdown, right? So intermediate trend lower following that daily time frame breakdown that occurred on Monday, but again, coming into some weaker areas of support. And I say weaker simply because this has only been tested once. As far as looking at the year-to-date chart here, it's only been tested once, so we're not going to call that a super strong area of support, more so like a reference point. However, price did hold that area for today. So main watch going to be very similar to what we've been doing all week, just keeping it with one primary reference point to establish direction on the day. And for tomorrow in NQ, that'll be today's low, which is that 17,535 downside level of interest, or 17,525, downside level of interest. So that's about it for the index. We're also going to have Netflix most likely on watch. Let's jump over to Netflix really quick here. So trading within the range, want to see if earnings can push price outside of this range, and we may have a stock in play to work with if you do like trading the individual names. So that's about it for the index. Hope everyone had a good day. It was a relatively slow day on my end. Caught about 95 points via 4 different trades. So we'll see what tomorrow gives us. If you guys have any questions, feel free to shoot me a DM in the Traders Think Tank. Otherwise, I'll see you tomorrow morning for the prep. Later.